There is a specific smell you only catch when you first water a new plant. It's damp, a little heavy, like crushed leaves and wet peat moss. You bring this thing home, set it on a windowsill, and immediately the room feels different. You probably own more than 3 houseplants right now. Most of us do. In fact, we spent over $17 billion on indoor plants last year. Millennials and Gen Z are buying them at rates we have never seen before in the nursery trade. People say it is just a design trend, or something to put in the background of a photograph. But that doesn't explain the quiet, almost desperate attachment we have to them. When a monstera leaf turns yellow and drops, it actually ruins our morning. Why do we care so much? The answer is actually biological. We aren't decorating. We are subconsciously medicating ourselves. Back in 1984, a biologist named Edward O. Wilson noticed something interesting about how humans behave. He called it the biophilia hypothesis. The idea was simple but profound. He argued that we have an evolutionary hardwired instinct to connect with living things. For 99% of human history, our hands were constantly in the dirt. We were burrowing mammals, living entirely outdoors, completely reliant on the seasons. Then, very recently, we moved inside. We sealed the windows, turned on the air conditioning, and poured concrete over the soil. Our bodies noticed the absence. We started developing what some researchers now call nature deficit disorder. But your brain still expects the forest to be there, and when it isn't, things start to go wrong. That same year, Wilson published his book. A completely different researcher was looking at hospital records in Pennsylvania. An environmental psychologist named Roger Ulrich. He was looking at 46 patients who had just gone through gallbladder surgery. They were all recovering in the same hospital, on the same floor, receiving the exact same care. But Ulrich noticed a strange pattern in how fast they were healing. Half of the patients had a bed next to a window that looked out at a brick wall. The other half had a window looking out at a small stand of deciduous trees. That was the only difference. The patients who could see the trees left the hospital almost a full day faster. They needed far fewer heavy pain medications. And the nurses recorded significantly fewer negative notes about their moods. The physical healing of the human body was actually accelerated just by looking at leaves. Just looking. Not even touching them. That study changed the way we build hospitals today. It proved that gazing at nature isn't just pleasant. It drops your blood pressure, reduces muscle tension, and alters the chemicals in your blood. When you buy a fern and put it on your desk, your eyes are drinking in that green. You are giving your nervous system an anchor. A lot of commercial offices do this now. They install living walls and green interiors, and they track the data. Employee wellness reliably jumps by about 15%. But looking at a plant is only half the equation. The real medicine is hidden where most people never think to look. In the dirt. If you watch people garden today, whether they are repotting a pothos indoors or weeding a raised bed outside, you'll notice almost everyone wears gloves. Thick, rubber-coated gloves to keep their hands perfectly clean. We treat soil like it's dirty, like it's something to protect ourselves from. But creating a sterile barrier between your skin and the potting mix is actually a mistake. You are blocking one of the most powerful physiological benefits of growing a plant. There is a microscopic organism living in healthy soil called Mycobacterium vaccae. It was first discovered back in the 1970s. An immunologist was working on the muddy shores of Lake Kyoga in Uganda. He noticed that the people living closest to the lake, who had their hands in the earth every day, responded unusually well to certain vaccines. Their immune systems were incredibly robust. For decades, scientists thought this soil bacteria was just an immune booster, until a completely accidental discovery happened in 2004. An oncologist named Dr. Mary O'Brien was running clinical trials. She was treating lung cancer patients by injecting them with a preparation of this exact soil bacteria, hoping it would help their bodies fight the disease. Sadly, it didn't prolong their lives. But Dr. O'Brien noticed a side effect that nobody saw coming. The patients receiving the soil bacteria experienced a massive surge in emotional health. Their cognitive function improved. Their anxiety dropped. They were experiencing the effects of a powerful antidepressant, but they were just receiving microbes from the dirt. How does mud make us happy? A neuroscientist named Christopher Lowry finally mapped it out a few years later. When we inhale the dust from soil or get it on our skin, those microbes enter our bloodstream. They travel to a very specific part of the brain, the dorsal raphe nucleus, and they physically flip a switch that tells your neurons to produce serotonin, the same exact chemical that prescription antidepressants target. When you open a fresh bag of potting soil and breathe in that rich, earthy smell, you are literally inhaling nature's stress vaccine, but only if you actually touch it. If you buy a cactus, set it on a shelf, and never interact with the soil, you miss this completely. In fact, succulents make up 45% of the indoor plant market right now. We love them because they are tidy. They barely need water. They sit in dry, sandy grit. They are safe, sterile little companions for tiny apartments. But that sterile environment fuels what evolutionary biologists call the hygiene hypothesis. We have scrubbed our lives so clean that our immune systems are bored. We lost touch with our old friends, the beneficial bacteria we evolved alongside. And a bored immune system turns on itself. It causes inflammation, allergies, and surprisingly, depression. We paved over the medicine, and now we wonder why we feel so anxious. That anxiety is exactly what Dr. Lowry was trying to understand when he ran an experiment on mice. This was back in 2017. He took healthy mice and injected them with the soil bacteria. Then, he put them in a highly stressful situation. He placed them in a cage with a much larger, highly aggressive mouse, an environment designed specifically to induce severe trauma. Normally, mice in this situation develop stress-induced colitis. They essentially get stomach ulcers from pure, unadulterated fear. But the mice that received the dirt bacteria didn't. They were 50% less likely to show cellular damage. They had lower system-wide inflammation, and they acted far less fearful when faced with the aggressor. The soil microbes had effectively prevented a PTSD-like syndrome. All from the same bacteria you disturb when you finally decide to repot that root-bound pothos sitting in your kitchen. Another study, done a few years earlier, took it even further. Researchers in New York fed this same bacteria to mice, literally smearing it on tiny peanut butter sandwiches. Then they put the mice in a maze. The mice that ate the dirt navigated the maze twice as fast. Their learning capacity doubled, and the effects lasted for weeks, even after the dirt was removed from their diet. We look at the houseplant boom, at people spending billions of dollars on tropical foliage they barely know how to care for. And we laugh about it. We make jokes about plant addiction. But there's nothing funny about an entire generation trying to instinctively heal themselves. We are biologically starving. We live in concrete boxes, staring at glass screens, breathing filtered air. Buying a plant is a survival response. It is the human brain demanding a connection to the ecosystem that built it. The next time you bring a plant home, don't just treat it like an object. Take off the gloves. Run your bare hands through the soil. Let the dust rise into the air. Let the dirt get under your fingernails. It isn't messy. It's medicine. And it changes how you look at the plants you already have, even the ones that are struggling right now, because you realize the relationship isn't just one way. You aren't just keeping them alive. They are quietly doing the exact same thing for you. We worry so much about getting gardening perfectly right, finding the ideal window, buying the expensive fertilizer, panicking over a single yellow leaf. But the science tells a much more forgiving story. The simple act of trying is enough to trigger your biology. Just sharing a room with a living thing drops your heart rate. Just turning the potting mix over with your bare fingers changes the chemistry of your brain. So tomorrow morning, when you go to check if your plants need water, don't just look at the dry soil and think of it as another household chore. Touch the earth and take a deep breath.